First, we'll start with what is sidewalk counseling, and I find that even people who have been very active in the pro-life movement for a long time will say to me when I'm going to the abortion clinic, "Are you going to be picketing this afternoon?" Sidewalk counseling is not a picket. It is not a rally, and it is not a march. Those are all outside activities, on the street activities that are extremely legitimate. We engage in them all the time, but they are not sidewalk counseling. Sidewalk counseling is a very unique ministry. It is a compassionate outreach to a woman in crisis. And you're reaching her at the very last moment in her crisis when she has decided that abortion is the answer to her situation. So we reach out with compassion. It is also a witness to the dignity of the unborn baby. Whether you are able to save that child's life or not, you're recognizing his value and his dignity when you stand there being willing to offer information to that baby's mother. It is also a reminder of the reality of abortion. And this is, I'm afraid, something that the vast majority of people simply do not comprehend. And if you look at abortion as a political issue, a debate topic, an essay topic, a legal argument, you miss the fact that in every single abortion you have a real baby and you have a real mother. And when you stand in front of the abortion clinic, you're watching that life and death drama of a woman coming to that clinic with a baby in her womb. And when she walks out of there, having had the abortion, she leaves that dead baby inside the building. She is now the mother of a dead baby. Everybody that's involved in the abortion battle should, at least from time to time, get back out there in front of an abortion clinic. There are pro-life people who have actually never been to an abortion clinic. I don't think they can have the proper attitude toward what it is we're fighting until they see a woman going into a clinic. The first time I ever went to an abortion clinic was actually about a year after the Roe v. Wade decision. I went to a protest in front of a clinic on Grand Avenue, Concord Clinic. It's no longer there, downtown on the north end of the Loop. And we had a picket. It was a picket that day. Sidewalk counseling had not really come to the fore yet. We were marching in a little loop on Grand Avenue right in front of the clinic. A woman came from across the street. I don't know if she came from a bus stop or she parked her car someplace, but she walked through this picket line into the abortion clinic. And that particular building has a big dark gray concrete wall around it. It's a very ominous looking building, and the entrance to the clinic was inside to the left of the entrance through that concrete wall. And you could see a sign on the inside the glass window of the abortion clinic that said, "No children allowed." They didn't want people to bring their toddlers or any other children with them, but that it was just so poignant. No children allowed. No, not a safe place for children. I found it truly devastating to actually watch a young woman walk. It was the first time I had ever seen anybody go to an abortion clinic. Who is best suited to be a sidewalk counselor? Well, really anyone. Sometimes people say, oh, it probably needs to be women or younger women that approach the women going into a clinic, but not necessarily. Grandfathers, grandmothers, younger men, older men, clergy are extremely effective at the abortion clinic. We could use an awful lot more clergymen that would come out because they can kind of reach the hearts of women and their companions often when we cannot. Anyone with a heart for the unborn and a compassion for the mothers is a candidate for a good sidewalk counselor. But those are key elements: a heart for the unborn and compassion for their mothers, because you really have to approach it with sincere love and compassion, like a Mother Teresa, you're not thinking about, can I win this one? You're thinking about, how can I help? How can I help? What can I do to help this woman see the value of her child, to help her see that she can actually make it through this pregnancy? I have on here, be willing and able to set aside any problem, situation, or agenda that may interfere with the mission. And the reason I say that is that if you're having a particularly bad day for some other reason, it might not be a good time to be at the clinic. If you're having a struggle with a friend or with your family, or I had a woman who came to my office once that wanted to get involved in Sidewalk Counseling, and I said to her, well, I'll be there on Tuesday at the clinic if you'd like. Come out and see, how it goes, what it's like out there. I had never met her before. She had not been to the clinic before. And usually when people come and say they want to get involved, they don't end up showing up. That's my experience. So you're kind of rare people who are interested, and you show up. But she came. Her name was Kathy. She did show up at the clinic. A man came with his girlfriend, and they wouldn't take any literature. I offered literature, tried to talk to them. They went right on in the clinic. But the man came back out for a cigarette, and I tried to talk with him and try to give him the information, ask him to take it in and give it to his girlfriend. And he started to turn to go back in the clinic, and Kathy grabbed his arm. And she just insistently, you've got to get her out of there. You've got to get her out of there. It's a terrible thing. You've got to get her out of there. Well, he was shocked, and he pulled away and he went into the clinic. I turned to her and I said, Kathy, you cannot touch anybody when we're out here, because you can get in a lot of trouble. They can call that assault. You just can't ever touch somebody. Well, she burst into tears. It turned out that she had had an abortion in that clinic, and she had never gone through any kind of healing. And she knew from her personal experience what that woman was going to go through. But she wasn't yet in a state where she could communicate that in an effective way. She couldn't be a useful sidewalk counselor yet. So I always warn women who have had an abortion experience, or men who have been involved in an abortion, to be healed of that experience before trying to help someone else. You want to pick out a few details to commit to memory. You don't have to remember everything about fetal development, because you're not going to have time to say that much anyway. And of course you've got the little brochures that you can have with you as evidence to show somebody. But just to be able to peel off a few little details from your memory. My favorite actually is the fingerprints and the fingernails. If you ever saw the movie Juno, did anybody see that movie? Because now it's been a while since that movie was popular, but there's a scene in there where the teenage girl that's pregnant initially goes to an abortion clinic before she decides she's going to place her baby for adoption. And out in front of the clinic is a classmate of hers who's protesting, who says to her, your baby has fingernails. And when she gets inside the clinic and she's filled out her little form and everything, she just gets really conscious of people's fingernails. Somebody's kind of chewing on their nails. Somebody else is, drumming their fingernails on the table or something, and that resonates with her, and she can't do that to her baby because her baby has fingernails. Little details that help to humanize that baby in the womb, because of course you can't see the baby. And even though most everybody takes a biology course at some point, it doesn't seem to transfer to the experience of being pregnant and scared. So, pick out a few facts and commit them to memory. You could do these 5 that I've selected, or any others. The heart beating at 24 days, or slightly over 3 weeks, is a good one. Brain waves detected at 6 weeks. The baby's sex is identifiable, and most of the people going to the clinic are going to be approximately these early weeks. 8 to 10 weeks are most of the women you're going to encounter there. So these details really apply to the baby that they are considering killing. You want to learn about the primary methods of abortion. Most of the clinics are doing quite a lot of the chemical abortions now. So those women are coming early in pregnancy, up to 63 days. They can, and then they'll do it beyond that as well, the chemical abortions. And what they will do is to give the woman one drug in the clinic and another one to take with them, so they're going to end up aborting that baby at home, and or in the shopping mall, or at school, or somewhere else that they are out and about. When they tried to legalize this particular type of abortion, the propaganda was that the woman would be very carefully monitored by her doctor. Well, of course, she doesn't know his name because they don't tell you the names of the doctors in the clinics. But that this procedure would be very carefully monitored. There'd be no danger of her actually delivering that dead baby somewhere else on her own. Well, that's not true. They don't monitor it. They just give her the drugs and send her on home. That's an important detail for you to know if you get a chance to talk to someone who's going in there for a chemical abortion. Plus, they have to sign a paper that they'd be willing to do a surgical abortion if the chemical abortion doesn't work, because it does fail about 5% of the time.
So if they can shut it down and
yeah, the first pill is to cut off the flow of progesterone, but that can be reversed. You can go to a hospital, to the emergency room, or if she happens to have her own gynecologist, and get doses of progesterone to counteract that action. The other pill is going to cause the contractions and the baby to be expelled. Okay. So the vast majority of the earlier surgical abortions are going to be the suction aspiration, D&C suction aspiration, where the baby is sucked out of the womb by a powerful vacuum machine and ripped to pieces. The baby at this stage is still small enough to be pulled through a relatively thin little tube when it is torn apart out of the womb. One of the clinics here, the Albany Clinic, and do you ever go to the Albany Clinic? Anyone here? It's a sort of sister clinic to the one that is down on Washington Street, Family Planning Associates. Their later term abortions are done on the northwest side at the Albany Clinic, and then those later abortions are a 2 to 3 day procedure, depending on how far along the woman is. So what they will do on the first day is to insert laminaria, which are little sticks of seaweed, into the cervix to cause it to expand. If she's got a fairly large sized baby, or she's closer to 18, 20 weeks, she's going to have to come back the second day and have that done again to expand the cervix enough that they can fit this size baby through, almost like she was going to have a regular birth through the birth canal. And then on the third day, they will do the abortion, which involves having to tear that baby apart. And in the clinic, they will tell them that it's not reversible. So they feel like if they start the procedure, they have no choice but to continue on. We have started a program with Resurrection Hospital out on Talcott and Harlem Avenue in Chicago, that it's called the Bethlehem Project, and they have been specifically trained in how to reverse this procedure. That the doctors will take the laminaria out, they will monitor the woman for a while to make sure that the cervix is closing and that the baby is still safe and sound inside the womb. And if she needs it, they can, continue working with her for prenatal care, because they have a prenatal program as well. So if you're able to talk to somebody who says, "Oh, I already started the procedure and I have to go through with it," that's not true. They can change their minds. They can reverse this process and continue with a successful pregnancy. You'll want to know as much as you can about the particular clinic that you're going to. Like if they are doing chemical abortions, which is usually the case with most of them. Out in Iowa, they started doing what they called telemed abortions. Have you heard of those? And they halted it for a while. Then a court said it was okay. I think they may have halted it again. But in that situation, a woman goes to a Planned Parenthood clinic. She talks to a doctor on a computer screen, like a Skype kind of a thing, and then the doctor pushes a button that opens a drawer in front of her, and that's the drugs for the chemical abortion. She doesn't actually get examined by anyone. And they call that good medical practice. It was pioneered by Planned Parenthood in Iowa because they have a lot of trouble getting abortion doctors to come and do the procedure. So rather than having the doctor travel anywhere to see the patients, the doctor can stay in one place, say hello to her on a computer screen, and push the button. Now, the theory probably is that somebody that's in the clinic with her will take her blood pressure and her medical history. I wouldn't count on it. I know we've had several conferences featuring former abortion providers, doctors and people who worked in the clinics and administrators, and one of the women testified to the fact that she had worked in this Planned Parenthood clinic for about 15 years in Iowa, in a small town in Iowa. It didn't do abortions. It referred for abortions to a bigger center in one of the bigger cities. Then she went to a Planned Parenthood meeting, and they were told that they all had to start doing abortions because that's where Planned Parenthood makes their money. So this clinic had to start doing abortions. And the way they were going to do them was this telemed abortion business. And she had no training at all in the medical field. No nurses training, no nurses aid training, no ultrasound training, none of that. She was the person who ran the business, so to speak, paid the bills, maybe she scheduled appointments. She didn't know the first thing about the medical aspect of any procedure, let alone abortion. And she was going to be the person who would actually do whatever the exam would be of these girls when they came to the clinic. That was the thing that pushed her over the edge, and she decided she had to get out because she couldn't do it. She thought she was helping women when she was just doing birth control stuff and didn't have to deal with the abortion issue other than to give them a name of someplace else. And that was the thing that finally woke her up. What are the abortion hours, so you know when it's important to be there? Although it's also good to be there when they're not doing abortions, because if you can catch a woman when she's there for something else, you may forestall her ever having an abortion at all. So, it's good to be there even when there aren't abortions, but it's more important to, if you have limited numbers of people to cover the abortion clinic, it's best to try to be there when it's actually open. What is the doctor's name? Now, we do know that Dr. Willie Parker is the doctor at Albany. Sometimes you find out the doctor's name inadvertently, and once in a while you see an abortion clinic that actually has the doctor's name advertised or on their website or something. But a lot of places they won't tell you, and they won't tell you on the phone either, because they don't want pro-lifers to go and protest at the abortion doctor's other offices or the abortion doctor's home. And what types of abortions are performed. So you'll know whether they do these later term abortions or not. Just so you're very prepared to be knowledgeable when you talk to the women. You'll want to know for sure where your local pregnancy resource centers are, so that if a woman is willing to consider a different option, you've got someplace to send her right away. And the crisis pregnancy centers are really, really key to the success of sidewalk counseling, because we, standing out on the sidewalk, don't have all the resources that a woman may need. Now, some women only need someone to say, you don't have to go through with this. And they'll go ahead and go home, and they'll be fine. But some of the women are going to need to talk to somebody. They're going to need some material resources. There are, women for whom The reason they're there is because of financial concerns. So the fact that there is a pregnancy center that can give them a free ultrasound, that can get them some free medical care, that can give them a baby car seat and material things that someone would need to go ahead and have a baby is very helpful. So we have to have a good relationship with the crisis pregnancy centers. Sometimes there will be 2 or 3 of them in an area fairly close to an abortion clinic. Sometimes it's kind of a distance. I did a seminar in Hawaii one time, and the closest pregnancy center to the abortion clinic was 3 hours away on the other side of the island. So in that situation, the sidewalk counselors were pretty much stuck with having to know everything about, for instance, the state resources that are available to women. These are the kinds of things that the counselors at the pregnancy centers know. They have the forms to fill out. They can help a woman get the state aid that they need, referrals to clinics and things like that for her medical care. So it's really a benefit when you've got a pregnancy center and you don't have to be the one resource person to know all that stuff. Be sure you know what services they provide in the CPC, because we don't want to make promises that cannot be kept. Like, you don't want to say you can run right over there and have an ultrasound if the place doesn't have an ultrasound machine. Or if they have an ultrasound, but they only do ultrasounds on Thursdays, for instance. So make sure you know exactly what it is that that center can provide when you're telling a woman what they can do for her. A lot of them have things like the parenting classes and baby cribs and nutrition classes and things like that. Some of them are very, very all service oriented. Also important to know your rights, particularly when you're going into Chicago because of the bubble zone law that we have in Chicago. Sidewalk counseling is protected by the First Amendment. It is freedom of speech. It is particularly cited in the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances bill, the law that was passed in order to stop pro-lifers from blocking entrances to abortion clinics. But in the judge's ruling, the Supreme Court's rulings, it specifically exempts sidewalk counseling. So it is, even when they tried very hard to get rid of all the pro-lifers by passing this bill, the courts recognized you can't trample on our First Amendment right to free speech. And the free speech does not depend on whether that person wants to hear what you have to say. When they say, I don't want to hear you, that doesn't mean you have to shut up. It might not do you any good to keep talking, but you have a right to keep talking. But you need to know what the laws are, and the people in the clinics and the escorts that come out and protect the clinics are bound and determined to misinterpret the law in order to try to intimidate you. So the law in Chicago is that within 50 feet of an entrance door, not an entrance to the parking lot, not a gate around the place, but an entrance door, within that 50 feet, a employee or patient of the clinic has a kind of 8-foot bubble around them. So they'll call the police and it'll get, kind of testy between who knows what about the law. It's a good idea to carry a copy of the law with you if you're going to be doing counseling, as Dave is nodding his head. It's always a good policy, obey the police officer no matter what, but do know your rights and have a copy of the bill. As our lawyer Tom Breck always says, comply at the moment, complain later. So if it comes down to the policeman tells you have to move someplace and doesn't think you know what you're talking about, you do what he says, because your aim out there is not to get arrested. Your aim is to try to help the women who are going in and to save a baby. So you don't want to get too hung up in my right to do this, my right to stand here on this public sidewalk, or my right to say what I want to say. You have that right, but keeping in mind your mission, you're standing up for your right may interfere with your mission if you get too belligerent about it. So You just got to do what the police say sometimes, and then let the lawyers contact the police department if there's a need to do. And then keeping the lawyer's phone number handy is always a good idea too, in case there's a need to call them. You can always say to an officer, "Let me get my attorney on the phone." They don't usually want you to do that, so usually they'll say, "No, that's not necessary. For now, we'll let you do this." Like at Albany, we'll be in the alley, and some of the time the police tell us we can't be in the alley, and some of the time they don't care, but we'll approach a car, because unlike at Washington Street, we're always approaching automobiles, almost always. I mean, sometimes a woman comes from a bus stop or something, but usually it's a car. And those escorts, they come out, they've got signs that say, "Drive right in, don't talk to them." And they lean in, they'll actually lean in the car and take the literature away that we have given to somebody. And when we try to say, "Don't let them take this from you. They don't want you to know that we've got help available for you." We're going to talk a little bit about the approaches to sidewalk counseling and what I call the Chicago method. Years ago, we realized that if abortion was as bad as we thought, there were probably women who had sued the abortion clinics. And once somebody has filed a lawsuit, it is a matter of public record. So you can go to the county clerk of whatever county the clinic is located in, and you can look up any lawsuits that have been filed against that clinic and against the doctors who work in that clinic. And that kind of research is a real good way to get information about the clinic and the people who work in the clinic as well. So from time to time, we go down to the Daily Center and we do research on the lawsuits that have been filed against the abortion clinics. I'm going to grab a water here. So what we do, you'll find in those records a complaint that has been filed by a woman or her family if it turns out that the complaint is because she died there. You read through the complaint and you can make a copy of it. You cannot take it out of there, out of the building, but you can make a copy of it to take with you. So they have photocopy machines which sometimes work. And if you ever go down, have you ever been to the county clerk's office in the Cook County Court? It's really archaic. It's like going back in time. They have these computers that are like the first computers ever created for the public use, and only a few of them actually work. So you have to keep trying different machines to get one that actually works. And you put in that you want a lawsuit where such and such a place is a defendant, and then you can put in Family Planning Associates or Planned Parenthood or something, and it'll bring up all these cases. You sometimes find some other interesting cases too that are not actually cases brought by patients of the clinics. But anyway, you read through the whole complaint and find what is the meat of it. And that's what we have on these lists, a little summary of basically what the person is claiming happened in that clinic. And then we put them together and we hand these to the women as a way of saying, don't be so sure that just because it's legal, it's safe. Because bad things have happened to other women who went into these clinics. In some cases, it's a matter of, for instance, this first one is the case of Tanya Reeves, who died after an abortion at the Planned Parenthood clinic downtown, and all of the details about this situation are so hazy. According to the newspaper, the abortion happened at the Planned Parenthood that's on Michigan Avenue, which actually even advertises that it only does chemical abortions. But she had a late-term abortion. So did she actually have it at that clinic and they weren't equipped to do surgical abortions? Or did she have it at the Planned Parenthood at LaSalle and Division, which also claims not to do late term, but to do abortions up to like 14 weeks or maybe 16? Did the press get it wrong that she was at 18 South Michigan? They didn't call 911. We have checked, and you can by the Freedom of Information Act, you can call and you can write and ask for all of the 911 calls to such and such a place on such and such a date. They did not call 911 as she was bleeding to death. They called, evidently, a private ambulance company that took this girl from wherever she was to Northwestern Hospital.
Who called ambulance?
We don't know because there's no record of it. The only record is that she arrived at Northwestern Hospital, where they did another abortion because the abortion had been incomplete. But by this time it was too late, and she bled to death. I mean, the hope is that telling women, this is what happened to somebody else, will give them pause, that they'll stop and say, ooh, gosh, I hadn't thought of that, you know. Maybe I don't want to submit myself to that kind of danger. Things can go wrong. And they do. My husband has talked to an emergency room doctor over at Lutheran General Hospital. She says she routinely sees women who have been damaged at the abortion clinic in Des Plaines. They don't go back to the abortion clinic when something goes wrong. If they start bleeding or they start cramping or their blood pressure goes high or something, they don't go back to an abortion clinic. They go straight to the emergency room, which is the smart thing to do, and something that a sidewalk counselor should advise women if they've gone on into the clinic, you see them coming out of the clinic, tell them if something goes wrong, go straight to the emergency room, don't come back to this clinic. Because the clinic is not going to take care of her. Plus, most of the time when something goes wrong, it's going to be after hours because they're not careful. They don't care about the women. They just want their money. So they get her out the door, do the next one. Whatever happens later, they don't have any record of it. So they can claim, oh, nothing ever happens because they don't follow up. They just move on to the next patient. So that is what the Chicago method is. There's also a method developed by Monsignor Philip Riley in Brooklyn, who started an outfit called the Helpers of God's Precious Infants. And his approach is very, very much prayer-based, to have a group of people who are like over here praying while the sidewalk counselors are over here reaching out to the women. That prayer support is very, very helpful to giving that sidewalk counselor the sense of, I'm not out here alone. I've got all this prayer support behind me. They're praying for the people who work in the clinic. They're praying for the patients who come to the clinic, for the people who live in the neighborhood of a death center like that. And they hand out rosaries to the women going in. Now, when I first heard about that, we went to Brooklyn to work with Monsignor for a few days, and he's telling us about handing rosaries to these women going in, and I'm thinking, well, they're not going to take them. For one thing, at least half of them aren't going to be Catholic. Why would people who weren't Catholic want a rosary? And those who are, they're on their way in to kill a child. Why would they take it? But strangely enough, they do. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of, I have a gift for you, let me give you this gift, and to say, if you pray, you won't have to do this. Or when they're coming out of the clinic. If you pray, you will never be here again. Nobody wants to go to an abortion clinic again. They didn't want to come in the first place. So you can combine, of course, handing out the lawsuits and handing someone a rosary or a cross or some sort of religious item that kind of draws their attention to the Lord. We don't want to talk outright about the morality of the abortion unless we get into a conversation where it seems like it will be appropriate. Because we don't want a woman to feel like we're judging her. And if you say something about the morality of it, or God doesn't want you to do this or something, she may well feel like you're judging her. So we don't want her to feel that. We want her to feel God's love, but we don't want her to think that we are judging her for what she has chosen. We understand she makes this decision under a great deal of stress. Most women are coming there because somebody in their life won't accept them pregnant, and they don't have the support they need from a parent or a boyfriend or a husband to be able to continue the pregnancy and feel safe and not alone. People are very, very afraid of being alone. So we understand that they're not making this decision in a rational way. They're trying to escape from a crisis that they find themselves in. Now, the generic approach would just be to distribute information and not say much of anything. And some people don't feel comfortable to talk, but they're okay with handing something out. So that's better than nothing, but not as good as being able to offer some actual counsel and information through talking. And then sometimes you have no approach possible to you but signs. If the clinic is, like Planned Parenthood is, way inside of a big wall, and a lot of times a clinic is situated inside of a strip mall, and so the property around it is like semi-private, and unless you've got a friendly business owner that's also in there, you're pretty much stuck with out on the sidewalk where the parking or the parking lot entrance to the whole place is. And then that's when signs can be your only resort to let them know that they can come and talk to you. If there's a crisis pregnancy center really nearby, these kind of signs that offer help can be really handy. We can use those, for instance, at the Planned Parenthood in Aurora because the pregnancy center is right nearby. That's where this particular sign happens to be showing. At Albany, we've got a crisis pregnancy center just almost across the street, and the signs work well. However, at Washington Street, the center isn't close enough for the signs to be useful because you wouldn't be able to give quick directions as to how to get there, like just across the street or a block west like this says. And then the question, of course, of when and if to use any graphic images can be a real controversial issue with people out in front of the clinic. The 8th week of life sign shouldn't be controversial because this is just a developing baby, and that might be a real good sign to bring out with you to the clinic. Most abortion clinics are doing these first trimester abortions, so possibly using a picture of the abortion during the first trimester. But the sidewalk counselor should never hold one of these pictures. If the pictures are going to be used, they should be stationed far enough away from where the sidewalk counselor is standing that it does not interfere with your ability to have a conversation with the person. And you don't want to be holding a sign. Now, I've seen some people who come out with one of those signs that say, "I regret my abortion," women who have had an abortion, and they come out and hold that sign. They shouldn't hold that sign while attempting to talk to somebody. They should put that away while they're being a sidewalk counselor. Because you don't want a barrier between you as the counselor and that woman. You just want to relate as another human being, compassionate and caring, and offering her some information. The second trimester abortion sign you could use if you're at a clinic that does late-term abortions, but I wouldn't use it at a place that doesn't do the late-term abortions because it may just end up causing you, well, I'm not that far along, that's not my baby. So you don't want to have anything that is going to give her an excuse to go into the clinic. I just read an account by Monica Miller. In fact, we posted it on our website. Monica Miller is a pro-life activist. She's been sidewalk counseling for 30 years at least. She lives in Michigan, and she just recently wrote a book called Abandoned about the retrieval of the babies' bodies from garbage dumpsters behind abortion clinics. She retrieved these babies and she arranged for burials, but she took their pictures before she buried them. And she included some of those pictures in her book. So She posted this story the other day about a woman, a crisis pregnancy, or a CPC counselor in one of the pregnancy centers had the book. A woman came to the pregnancy center 7 weeks pregnant. She thought it was okay to have her abortion because she was only 7 weeks pregnant. The baby would just be a blob of tissue. Well, one of these babies that was retrieved from the garbage and photographed was a 7-week-old baby, and that picture was in the book. So the counselor pulled open the book and showed her, this is an aborted baby at the same age of your baby. She was amazed because it looked like a tiny human being. And she changed her mind. So the headline of the story was, "The aborted baby saved a baby." Headlining the importance of how the pictures can be used to save babies' lives. Newest thing that has come along for the sidewalk counseling is text counseling. I don't know if there's any of that being done down at the Washington Street Clinic, or if Aid for Women has a text counseling dimension yet. The Women's Center does. Waterleaf out in Aurora does. The Southside Pregnancy Center does. They produce little business cards with a text number on it. So you can hand that to a woman. She can text, and she'll get immediately to a counselor with the pregnancy center. That counselor's job is to get her to make an appointment to come in to the clinic. And one of the advantages of this is young people are so used to texting, it feels comfortable to them. They've also been putting this text number on bus cards, inside of buses, and at the medical centers in colleges, so that this information is getting out to potential abortion clients, and they can very privately get in touch with a counselor at the Crisis Pregnancy Center. Their experience is that most of the girls that text do in fact show up for the appointments if they make an appointment. Well, of course, it doesn't really matter where the pregnancy center is that they're texting to once they're inside of a clinic, because the women come from all over the place to get to that abortion clinic. The people who come, for instance, to Family Planning Associates may be coming from the west side, or they may be coming from Indiana, or they may be coming from the south side or the north side. And if they text, for instance, if a woman from the north side texts to the number for the Southside Pregnancy Center, the counselor there is going to try to get her an appointment at the closest place to where she lives, to make it as easy as possible for her to go in and get an appointment and sit down and talk with somebody. I think it's really going to be a great lifesaver to have this tool when we can no longer reach her. And she can, of course, take that card home with her if she ends up going into the clinic, thinking about it, changing her mind. She goes home and texts and thinks a little bit more. I think it's going to be very, very helpful. So I think as must-have items, you've got to have with you a list of the crisis pregnancy centers that are available to her nearby, a leaflet with fetal development. The fetal model is really very, very helpful to just try to humanize that baby, because the ones we use are the same weight and size of the baby at 11 to 12 weeks. So if she's slightly younger than that, if she's carrying a baby that's 10 weeks or 9 weeks, it's close enough to that size to be relevant to her situation. A list of the lawsuits, I would really actually put that on the must-have item side, because I think it's very, very helpful. Abortion pictures only if you are comfortable using them. Let's go over some practical tips. A convenient carrier for your materials so that you've got them handy and you don't have to go fishing around in a big bag to find the things that you want to hand a person. Dress appropriately for the weather, which seems like a no-brainer, but sometimes you get out there and it turns out to be a whole lot colder than you thought, or it's raining and you don't have an umbrella or a raincoat or something. Have a camera with you. Most people's phones, service cameras now, but you want to have a camera because things happen sometimes at the clinic that you want to have a record of. Like for instance, if an ambulance should show up at the clinic, you're going to want a picture of that. For one thing, you can make a copy of that picture and show it to other people who are coming to the clinic to see, this is what happens here. Ambulances show up and take women away from the clinic and off to a hospital. If there's somebody trying to give you a hard time, if the escorts are getting too close, intimidating you, you take a picture. There is no expectation of privacy when you're out in the public. So even if they say, don't take my picture, you have the legal right to take someone's picture. But don't be alone. Always work with a partner. And part of the reason for that is emotions can run high out in front of an abortion clinic. Also, they could accuse you of trespassing or of touching someone, of assault. If there's nobody there to verify your story, to corroborate your story, then you're kind of at a disadvantage. So being with somebody else, it's just smart policy. But don't overwhelm the client with too many people. One person at a time should talk to a potential turnaway. Two of you might approach her, but one person should engage in the conversation and try to establish a relationship, get eye contact, get a conversation going between that client and one sidewalk counselor. And the other pro-lifers who are there should never, never, never interrupt someone else that's engaged in a conversation with a woman.